Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Todd Hogard. I'm with my my Facebook page and hopefully now my YouTube page, Peacemakers Wanted. And my guest today is Jason Tonioli.
Thanks, Todd, for having me.
He's one of my favorite pianists. You throw in Utah, you throw around names like John Schmidt and David Tolk and Paul Cardall, and I would throw in Jason Tonioli because I love his music. So, Jason, tell us a little bit about how you got into piano.
I had a mean mom that made me practice piano when I was a
Me
kid.
too.
And despite my efforts to not learn piano and not practice, luckily I have a mom who won the piano war with her son, and now I play piano and have been able to, write hundreds and hundreds of songs and record hundreds of songs and share those with millions of people. I still have a hard time wrapping my brain around the fact that millions of people here have heard, hundreds of millions of people, I guess, at this point, that have heard the music that I've been able to create and help a lot of people, which is, I mean, that's been very fulfilling to know that I've made an impact on people.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I went to a concert he did last week, and his mom introduced him, which was awesome. And I'm sure it's like all these years, me trying to get him to practice piano, and now she gets to see what you do, and I'm sure she just loves it too, right?
That was a pretty special night. I do a lot of piano stuff where it's just like piano, or maybe I'll have a violin with a duet. But that concert, I had a full orchestra of almost 60 people on the stage with us. And, I'm just think back of, when I was, in grade school and, complaining about practicing. I don't think either my mom or I had any, aspirations or visions that being on stage playing a full concert of music with a full symphony was even in the cards. Like that wasn't even like something you'd joke about, because it wasn't even something you'd think about doing. And there I was. It was amazing.
And it was a great concert. It was fantastic concert, and we'll talk about one of the special guests you had there here in a minute. But what what goes into your especially the music where you are creating the music from nothing, basically?
Honestly, I've just I always have songs going through my head almost all the time. I feel, you can call it a soundtrack to your life, but I feel like there's, you have all of the senses, and then there's kind of a spiritual sense, I think, that, sometimes gets left out when you talk about, this, hearing, feel, the feeling something is very much, I think, connected spiritually to music. And I think a lot of people hear music maybe, but they don't ever write it down. There's kind of soundtracks, or even if you're just repeating songs, I think there's always that soundtrack to your life. And luckily I've been able to capture some of those moments, and over a lot of hard work at the piano, write them out. When I started writing music, it was very, very painful. Like I was not good at it, but after doing it, a dozen times, 100 times, several hundred times, it starts to flow more. And most of the time I'm writing whatever I'm feeling, or if somebody's gone through something. I've got several songs that I wrote after a friend or loved one passed away, and it's those ones are extra special. And we all have moments where you need to feel peaceful and safe, and I think the piano is the place I often end up when I'm wanting to find some peace, I guess.
So a couple of your albums ended up being one's Finding Peace and one is Healing Piano. So that just goes along with what you're just talking about right there, right?
Yeah, well, and it wasn't, I don't think I sought out originally when I did start writing music. I wasn't really expecting to try to write music that would heal people, or that, be that soundtrack in the moment. But for whatever reason, I always seem to come back to, I mean, I've got some upbeat songs, but not very many. A lot of them are kind of just really, it's almost like a warm hug, or that warm embrace you'd get from a loved one. The songs help you feel good. I can't tell you how many people go to sleep listening to a playlist of my music. It's just supposed to help you hopefully feel like you're home and feel comfortable.
So one of those songs you mentioned at the concert was Amazing Grace that helped you through a hard time.
That song in particular, I mean, I'd played Amazing Grace before, but, several years ago, more than a decade now, when I lost my dad, um, he spent a couple years down in the South and loved going to the different churches, and Amazing Grace down in the Bible Belt is definitely kind of that's one of the most popular songs probably of all time, I would say. And that was his favorite kind of hymn. And when he passed away, that's what I ended up feeling and hearing. And I kind of wrote an arrangement of Amazing Grace at that week after he'd passed away. And through a whole lot of miracles, I ended up recording that song with a friend of mine who happens to be working on a bunch of Disney music projects, and so he ended up fully orchestrating that piano arrangement I'd done, and then we ended up recording it, and I got to go play alongside of a river up in the mountains with all the fall leaves, with a $160,000 Steinway piano next to a river that we kind of wound our way through the rocks to get to it in the leaves. And anyway, it was one of those kind of special moments that, I mean, where can you feel more peace than, in a beautiful place with nobody around next to a river, and there just happens to be an incredible grand piano sitting there that needs to be played, and yes, there were people like filming and doing, all the stuff that comes with doing a music video, but that was one of those really, really cool moments, where the light, man, it was special. The light was coming through just right. I mean, there was probably help from the other side to make sure the filming of that happened the way it was supposed to.
That's awesome. So one of the friends that you do stuff with, John Knudson,
Mhm.
you do a lot of duets with. How did that come about?
John, oh man, he's such an incredible violinist. He grew up just probably 20, 30 minutes north of me here in Ogden when he was a kid, but he is older than me, but he ended up learning violin, spent a whole lot of years in DC, played for, I think, the last 20 years of presidents of the United States. He's played at inaugural balls. He's played right alongside Billy Joel at the Obama inaugural ball. So it was him and Billy doing Piano Man. I mean, like, as a violinist, that's just not something you can plan for or even aspire to. And he's just so talented. But about 10 years ago, I guess now, I was approached to be part of a concert with one of the Celtic women singers, Alex Sharp, and at that concert that she was going to do for St. Patrick's Day, they said, "Well, gosh, you should have this violin guy come." And I'm thinking, I don't know very many violinists that can do, that like to be front and center on the stage, and they all need their music. And so it's just a lot of people are classically trained on the violin, and they're like, no, he's great. And when we got together to practice, I realized, oh my gosh, this guy can play by ear, and he just feels the music. And we just immediately had just such a cool connection. He's kind of the brother from another mother type of guy, where he literally knows what I'm thinking, and I kind of know where he's going to go as well. And we've just been really blessed to do a lot of cool projects. And at about 10 years ago, 9, 10 years ago, I was going through a very hard kind of cycle in my life, I'll call it, with some work type of stuff. And I was seeking out, how do I find some peace? And I had tons and tons of songs just coming to me, and I was writing music almost every day. It was one of those really cool periods. Sometimes music comes easy, sometimes it doesn't, but um, I had just so many songs. And then John, I'd call him up and say, "Hey, come down, I got a new song for you." And we'd just play back and forth. And we did this full album called Finding Peace with just the two of us. And Chuck helped us do orchestration for that. He's my friend that he's got a studio down in Sandy, Utah. But he's worked with John Schmidt and the piano guys for years, helped John really get his start. Back in the day, he was the more recent project that he was working on was up for a Grammy, the Hogwarts Legacy Harry Potter soundtrack. So he's literally like writing, he's stunt doubling for John Williams is what I call it a lot of times. So anyway, so Chuck was really kind as we recorded down at his studio, and he helped put orchestra and just bring that orchestra to life on that. And I still think, it's been years since we did that album, but I think that it's one of those albums that really stands on its own still to this day, that helped me through those hard times. And I know, that album in particular, has helped a lot of people, and then, which is, really cool. Even if I just helped one person, that would have been worth it. But I know it's gotten in front of a whole lot more than just one person to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned all those big names he's done stuff with. And he said at your concert, he's up there fanboying over someone out in the audience. Amazing that he's playing her music. Janice Kapp Perry.
That was special.
Were you fanboying too?
Yeah, I don't know that I call it fanboy. I've been lucky enough to be around a lot of really amazing people, and that's, you realize that people are just people, and they want to be, Janice Kapp Perry's amazing, and yes, probably a little bit of fanboy. I grew up singing her songs, having my mom sing her songs to me, which was, and so when I had the opportunity a couple of years ago, I just kind of on a whim, I just felt like I need to reach out, and I don't think they've done piano solos of a lot of the music that she's done, and hadn't seen anything new for a while. And I just reached out and, went and met with them, and they gave me permission to do arrangements, which was, that was amazing. Like, I was so fortunate to be able to do that. And then after I'd done the piano album, John was visiting, and he brought his violin. He's out in my recording studio that I have now, and we just started playing together. I'm like, hey, listen to the song I did for Janice Kapp Perry. It's, this, and you'll recognize it, and start playing. And he just pulls his violin out and starts playing right along with me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this needs to be duets. And so we literally just released, I've got the piano album that came out, and then a month later we released the duets book and album of us playing. And it's just been, they're very similar, same song, but total different, vibe to them. And I love them both. They're both great. The music she's written has been so good, and, such good messages as well.
Yeah. So there were two moments from the concert I want to talk about. John's first teacher, was in the orchestra, and I've talked to both of them. He talked about how John has done amazing stuff, but it's just gone up another level when he's been doing music about the Savior. Did you notice the same thing?
Grover is one of those really special people. I've been able to be around him, and he played in the orchestra. But he's just kind of that humble, amazing person. We had an interaction Monday night that still I'm thinking about, which is, it was really cool being on stage, but it's kind of left me thinking still to this moment. He asked me this question. He says, "Do you write Jesus into your music?" And I've never had anybody ask me that. I've always tried to have, a good feeling, or the spirit, kind of be there, when I write music. But I just kind of stopped for a minute, and I thought, you know what, I think I do. It's just having that feeling, and I think in trying to, have it be something that I could be proud to play. If Jesus were right here standing next to me, if I could, that you play something for him, I guess I always try to have that feeling with me. So I think, yeah, in the music that I do, it probably does come out. Am I perfect? Heavens no. Do I always have the Spirit with me? Of course not. I'm human just like everybody else. But I think when you do try to invite the Spirit and the Savior into our life, and kind of be like him, and do things that are gonna, that he would be right there doing with you. I mean, it does change your perspective, and should probably change how you, and everything, and things you do, the things you say, that, when you sit at the piano and play a song, yeah, it does change it.
Then all three of you, you and John and his teacher, all were connected in a moment when one of the orchestra members, like the viola player, her bridge popped out. It scared the dickens out of the conductor. But he just comes up, oh, I can fix that. And he comes to fix it. And then to help alleviate maybe everyone feeling a little on edge kind of thing, you just start playing. And then John just joins in. And to me, that was just showing you guys are at peace in the moment and you're helping them feel at peace. I thought that was an amazing moment.
That was fun. It was, it was crazy because Tim was up there he was like literally ready to lift his little magic wand to start the orchestra. And it just poof, and luckily it didn't like hit somebody and, stick in somebody's leg or head. But it was loud and the whole thing popped. But yeah, it just, nobody wants to have that happen. And should you take, the person typically in that moment probably would go off stage and do that. But like the guy that fixes everybody's instruments was literally right there with the bass. And so I thought, well, I could play the Jeopardy tune, I guess, but I just played what I felt right at the moment. And within about a measure, John popped in and it was pretty cool. It was a neat moment for sure. So Grover healed the viola. So
That was awesome. And then the last thing I'll bring up, you did an encore that you hadn't really planned it out.
John already had his earpiece off. He was done.
And Tim said that was his favorite song, and it was a healing moment for him. I don't know if he told you that, but again, it was a Janice Kapp Perry that you guys did as a duet, trying to be like Jesus, and that was a great way to cap the night. So
it felt right. And you always hope, I guess, when you're on stage that everything's going to go well. And the reality, life's the same way. The reality is your bridge pops off sometimes, and sometimes the instrument's unplayable. But I think, if you just recognize stuff like that's going to happen, and you do your best to, be the instrument that's playable, but sometimes you only got 2 or 3 strings that are usable. And the reality is, if you're trying your best to do what you ought to be doing, God can do pretty amazing things, even with just a couple strings, if you'll just let him. And, the cool thing, and since we're talking about the symphony, every single person in this 60-person symphony orchestra matters. Like the fact that viola was going to be missing, we probably could have gone through the song and been fine and survived without it. But, you start losing an instrument out of tune, and all of a sudden, or you're missing your horns, or you're missing your timpani. I mean, it just, every single one of us is important in our own way. Most of the time we don't realize how important we actually are or what we're even capable of. I think a lot of us feel like, man, I don't, do I really matter, or would anybody notice if I wasn't here, or, but the reality is every single person we all matter. And I think it's important for us to, once you get to a certain age and you get mature enough to realize that, to do your best to help other people see the greatness in themselves. We're each children of God, and, if we treat each other that way, think how much better this world would be, right?
amazing. Okay, so I usually ask people, I didn't come out and ask this, but when I say the phrase peacemakers wanted, what does that make you think regarding your music?
I think it makes me pause before you say something to somebody that you're going to regret. There's probably multiple times throughout the day that you have different thoughts that maybe wouldn't be that nice, but in the big scheme of things, if you do your best to be a peacemaker and help others and be kind, 99.9% of the time, that kindness and peaceful offering that you can bring to a situation is going to be the right decision versus, arguing with your friend or calling them stupid. I mean, there's so many opinions out there today with, whether it's social media, the news, politics. I mean, it's just everybody seems to want to disagree, but um, if you just kind of be a peacemaker, I've found that you can talk to nearly every single person and you can get along and realize that you like them even and that they can be your friend. So that's to me what a good peacemaker does is, they're kind to everyone.
Okay. Okay. Well, how can people find your music and be able to listen to it?
Well, you can find my music at Tonioli.com. If you want to see all of the crazy things we're doing, from the vacation travel agency to the software stuff that I do. If you do JasonTonioli.com, I think they've got kind of you can find about everything there. But if you want to listen to music, you can just talk to your phone or your Alexa device and just say, listen, play Jason Tonioli music, and I'll play you some healing piano and peaceful piano stuff if that's what you're looking for as well. So it's pretty easy to find it if you just type. If you can spell my last name, Tonioli, that's the trick.
Awesome. Okay. Jason, thank you so much for being my guest or allowing us into your studio there for just a few moments.
Happy to share. Thanks, Todd.